Hello, everybody, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Dr. Will McGarry, and I am the ICSM co-chair of this international co-sponsored meeting on culture, heritage, and climate change. On behalf of my two co-chairs, Dr. Jyoti Hosagraha from UNESCO and Dr. Deborah Roberts from the IPCC, I would like to welcome you all to this opening ceremony and launch event. Over the next week, over 150 global experts from a range of fields and backgrounds, including traditional knowledge holders, will meet virtually to develop and review the state of knowledge regarding the connections of culture, heritage, and climate change. It's the first time that such an event has taken place, and it has been many years in the making. It also comes at an opportune and key time. Following the recent UNFCCC Conference of Parties in Glasgow, the attention of the world is focused like never before on responding to the ever worsening impacts and challenges posed by climate change. These impacts have been starkly detailed in the report Climate Change 2021, the physical science basis, the contribution of the IPCC's Working Group 1 to the 6th Assessment Report, released just a few months ago. The urgency of the situation is no longer in doubt, and this meeting responds to this urgency by working to assure that the culture and heritage, including natural heritage dimensions of climate change and of mitigation and adaptation, are fully assessed and addressed. Today's event starts the beginning of our meeting this week, and we're very honored to have representatives from key organizations here to say some words. These are Dr. Hosung Lee, Chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Mr. Ernesto Otone, Assistant Director General for Culture at the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, Professor Dr. Teresa Patricio, President of the International Council of Monuments and Sites, and Dr. Pasang Dalma Sherpa, former co-chair and current member of the Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples Platform Facilitative Working Group. Following these esteemed guests, we would like to provide an overview of what we are going to be doing this week, which will be provided by the meeting's scientific coordinator, Dr. Hannah Morell, who will present on the key scientific questions and objectives for the meeting. But before I invite our first speaker, I would like to briefly acknowledge some of the many people and organizations who have worked tirelessly to ensure this meeting's success. To our teams and colleagues from meeting's three co-sponsors, ICSM, UNESCO, and the IPCC, who have set the agenda from the outside and provided wisdom and guidance throughout, thank you. Thank you also to our meeting partners, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability. To our amazing scientific steering committee who helped to select participants, offered valuable advice and peer-reviewed the white papers produced for this meeting, many of whom are also chairing sessions throughout the week and will be working with our rapporteurs to ensure our discussions are carefully and accurately recorded. Thank you. To our white paper author teams who have worked across time zones and within narrow timeframes to produce three incredibly detailed drafts, which will form the basis of our discussions this week, thank you. And to those involved in the practical delivery of this week, to the Zoom coordinators, to our rapporteurs and technical staff and chairs, thank you too. Finally, thank you to our financial supporters without whom none of this would have been possible. Thanks first to our principal financial sponsor, the German Federal Environmental Foundation, and thank you also to the Swiss Federal Office for Culture and the China Cultural Heritage Agency, each of which provided additional support. Thank you all. It is now a great honor to hand over to our opening speaker, Dr. Hosung Lee, Chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Dr. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. We are very happy to be working together on this with UNESCO and ICSM. Distinguished friends and colleagues, as chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, I'm pleased to welcome you to this unique gathering. For the first time in IPCC's history, we are bringing together in one forum the scientists and experts from the culture and heritage community and those working on climate change science. Not only is this a historical meeting, but it is a historical opportunity to explore and deepen our collective knowledge and understanding of how climate change impacts culture and heritage, and how these can enlighten our pathways to possible solutions in tackling climate change. Our culture and heritage are windows into millennia of human experience from which we can draw and use them to shape our strategies to adapt and to make our communities more resilient to climate change risks and challenges. Are we capable of projecting from our collective past into our shared future? I believe, yes, we are. I believe this is not only possible, but it is imperative that we do so. For decades now, we have known that the world is warming. Our most recent report, as mentioned before, the contribution of Working Group 1 to the 6th Assessment Report, published 4 months ago, laid out the most up-to-date physical science knowledge about climate change. The report clearly shows that recent changes in the climate are widespread, rapid, and intensifying, affecting every part of the world. Some changes are unprecedented in thousands of years. Human activities are causing climate change. There are indelible human fingerprints on changes to our climate. Compared to the pre-industrial era, our planet is already 1.1 degrees Celsius warmer. Human influence is making extreme climate events, including heat waves, heavy rainfall, droughts, more frequent and severe. Climate change is already affecting every region on Earth in multiple ways. The changes we are experiencing today will increase with further warming. It is critical to recognize that there's no going back from some changes in climate system. However, some of these changes could be slowed and others could be stopped by limiting warming. And the science is very clear on that. Unless there are immediate, rapid, and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or even 2 degrees Celsius will be put beyond our reach. But it is not just about temperature. Climate change is bringing multiple different changes in different regions, such as more intense rainfall and associated flooding, as well as more intense drought in many regions. Some of these changes in our climate system are particularly relevant to the theme of this gathering, and they represent a clear and imminent threat to our culture and heritage. For example, the continued sea level rise will have irreversible and dire impacts on people living in small island states, such as Kiribati and Tuvalu, or in the Arctic. This means loss of human habitat, loss of territory and livelihoods, posing complex and difficult existential questions, not only for these societies, but equally so for the entire international community. Consequently, this also means the loss of cultural identity, material and non-material traditions, and the sense of belonging for these communities. Beyond these themes, there are additional layers of interlinked and complex social, economic, legal, human mobility, and other questions that warrant the full and undivided attention of policymakers. We also must recognize the threats posed by storm-driven coastal erosion, temperature changes, rising sea levels, and floods to the world's cultural heritage sites. Most of these sites are bedrocks and sources of vitally important indigenous knowledge. Their physical loss is not only an irreparable loss to our collective history and our science. As these heritage sites perish, they can leave an unbreachable chasm in our ability to pass on indigenous and local knowledge from one generation to the next one. one should not forget the intangible yet so profoundly valued experiences of our cultural and natural heritage, the aesthetic and spiritual enrichment they offer to us, the role they play in societies and cultural identities, in our recreation and knowledge, and how these subtle memories and experiences shape our physical and mental health. Distinguished friends and colleagues, I would like to stress here that IPCC assessment reports increasingly acknowledge the need for climate science to explore and tap into all areas and forms of knowledge. This is a critical component if we as IPCC are to present comprehensive and balanced assessments of the causes, impacts, and responses to climate change. I urge you to approach this gathering with ambition and vision. This co-sponsored meeting will allow us to explore the importance of cultural knowledge and heritage in understanding and responding to climate change challenge. And we are only at the start. I hope this meeting will help generate more research across diverse disciplines and raise awareness among policymakers about cultural and natural heritage and climate change and possible models of adaptation and mitigation. Culture and heritage are vitally important aspects of our lives and resources, influencing how our communities and societies adapt to climate change. This meeting is convened just before the approval session of the IPCC's Working Group 2 contribution to the sixth assessment report. This report will provide important information that will help inform the growing global debate on impact and adaptation to climate change, especially given the strong focus on this issue that emerged at the COP26 in Glasgow. I wish you a very successful and productive meeting. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for those important and inspiring words and for addressing our meeting today. Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Ernesto Otone, Assistant Director General for Culture at UNESCO. Mr. Otone, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and dear friends, it is my pleasure to join you today as a co-sponsor of the UNESCO, IPCC, and ICOMOS Initiative on Culture, Heritage, and Climate Change. At this important milestone in our shared quest to ensure the full integration of heritage in the international climate agenda. Climate change is the defining issue of our time. In every part of the globe, cultural and natural heritage sites are being threatened by bushfires, drought, floods, storms, which are increasing in both their frequency and intensity. The threat is real. One in the three natural sites is currently at risk. And if nothing is done, the coral they hold may disappear by the end of the century. The uprooting of communities due to climate change is also threatening entire ways of life. This includes the practice and transmission of living heritage, oral tradition, performing arts, social practices, and festive events. At the same time, rising seas could submerge Venice in Italy, Zanzibar in Tanzania, Rapa Nui in Chile, or Luang Prabang in Laos, while encroaching deserts could bury iconic places such as Meroe in Sudan. Today's meeting could therefore not be any more timely. Placing heritage at the heart of the global climate agenda can no longer be delayed. Our collective actions for the protection of natural and cultural heritage impacted by climate change must be strengthened, especially in the most vulnerable countries and regions, such as small island developing states and in the African continent. With this in mind, UNESCO, building on its distinctive mandate in the fields of culture, education, science, and communication, has been driving action to respond to these urgent challenges, alongside its partners, including, of course, the IPCC and e-commerce, its member states, and all stakeholders through a multidisciplinary approach. Building on our strategy for climate action and the declaration of ethical principles in relation to climate change, as well as our sixth convention in the field of culture, UNESCO has long been working to safeguard the world's heritage from the effects of climate change, advancing the role of culture for climate change mitigation and adaptation, and its key role as a source of resilience. Culture is more than just an asset. It is also a fundamental resource to respond to the global crisis caused by climate change and the related loss of biodiversity. It contributes greatly to people's well-being, and it's instrumental in crafting sustainable futures. A lot is to be learned from local and indigenous know-how, knowledge, and constructions. Ensuring its transmission, protection, and promotion is therefore crucial. Safeguarding natural world heritage sites is also key. Forests and oceans serve as precious resources for capturing the carbon that humanity continues to produce in greater and greater amounts. On one hand, forests in World Heritage Sites cover 69 million hectares, roughly twice the size of the Republic of Congo. They protect and store 13 billion tons of carbon, which, if released into the atmosphere as CO2, would represent almost 1.3 times the global total annual CO2 emissions from fossil fuels. On the other hand, UNESCO's World Heritage marine sites comprise at least 1/5 of blue carbon ecosystems and store carbon assets equivalent to about 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Yet the carbon sinks have limits. They are fast approaching saturation, as indicated by UNESCO's reports on blue carbon, and World Heritage forest carbon sinks under pressure. Supporting countries in responding to climate-related disasters and their impact on heritage through capacity building is also a priority. I am pleased to recall that the United Nations Secretary General, in his report of September 2019 Climate Action Summit, assigned UNESCO as the lead agency for the initiative of the protection of cultural and natural heritage from climate change, which was proposed by Greece. An initiative that, as part of our shared operational network in the field of culture and climate action, will help us monitor the impact of climate change on heritage and concert our action for its safeguarding. Today's event has evolved from an initial reflection launched 2 years ago. As many of you may know, on the eve of the 52nd session of the IPCC in 2020, UNESCO launched a reflection group on culture and climate change. This reflection group allowed us to start a discussion with global experts from the field of climate change, culture, and science on the role of culture and heritage as a key resource for climate change mitigation and adaptation. I'm proud to see that our collective efforts have led us here today with the joint purpose of achieving a better acknowledgement and integration of culture in the international climate agenda. The growing recognition of the role of culture for climate action at the recent G20 in 2021 testifies to the effective impact of concerted global action, which for the first time shone the spotlight on the need to address the climate crisis through culture. Progress has undeniably been made. However, enhanced data collection and strengthened synergies between culture and science will be required to fulfill the need for a comprehensive approach that can help reverse the effects of climate change, including by integrating the transversal role of culture. Addressing the impact of climate change on heritage in this make or break period will require all of us here today to ensure that the important discussion that will be held are built onto defined, tangible solutions for integrating culture and natural heritage into their national climate policies and responses through multi-stakeholders collaboration and participatory process that engage local and also indigenous communities. I'm convinced that the outcome of this international meeting will bring new dynamism to the urgent calls to protect the world's heritage from the negative impact of climate change and ensure that future generations continue to benefit from it. The knowledge that will be generated and shared through these exchanges, as well as the partnership and collaboration that will be fostered, will no doubt bring us one step closer to the full recognition of culture in the climate agenda and to the adoption of integrated policies that take into account the fundamental role of culture for climate change mitigation and adaptation. I would like to end by expressing UNESCO's appreciation to the two other co-sponsors of this event, IPCC and ICOMOS, to the Scientific Steering Committee of this initiative, and to all the participants who will be joining us over the coming days. I really wish you a very fruitful exchanges, and thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Atone. Thank you for your wonderful and pertinent colleagues' comments and for your wishes for the meeting ahead. Next, please allow me to introduce Professor Teresa Patricio, President of the International Council on Monuments and Sites, to say a few words. Professor Patricio, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. Je me permets de m'adresser à vous aujourd'hui en français. Je tiens à vous dire combien j'apprécie
I will be speaking to you in French. I would like to tell you that I am very glad to meet you today, and I am honored to be speaking to you on behalf of ICOMOS when we are in our launch event for the first ever meeting of UNESCO, IPCC, ICOMOS to reinforce the synergy between culture, heritage, and climate change. First and foremost, allow me to introduce the organization for whom I work. We work in cooperation with the UNESCO and with NGOs to see how we can promote the theory, the methodology, and all the approaches adopted to face climate change and its impacts. And we're talking about different impacts. We focus on the exchange of information and the implementation of different projects. As an international council for monuments and sites, ICOMOS considers that heritage and culture are the foundation of all initiatives to fight climate change. It is essential to make sure that culture and heritage are taken into consideration when we want to deal with climate change. And this can happen through cooperation with different NGOs and agencies. That's why ICOMOS helped last year by calling for a joint action by all relevant stakeholders to fight climate change, not only through adaptation responses, but also by adopting a collective precaution approach to face climate change. This international meeting, co-sponsored on culture, heritage, and climate change, represents a huge and important step in the efforts that are exerted by ICOMOS to improve the integration of culture and heritage in the climate approach in general and in our efforts against climate change. ICOMOS has also co-sponsored an event on the margins of COP21, and Dr. Yonasu has also taken part in this, and it aims at improving the perspective of, or taking into consideration, the culture and the heritage in responses to climate change. And today, through our meeting, we want to focus on how we can use the outcomes and results that we already have to advance our objective. Why are we part of this? Because we believe that that in order to have a complete evaluation of the situation, we should take into consideration the different physical dimensions and moral dimensions of diversity, heritage, and culture. This moment is vital. IPCC will be evaluating the results and thinking about the different things related to this. My vision is to take into consideration the different cultural perspectives to implement the United Nations SDGs by 2030, especially when it comes to climate change. We have to promote cities for everyone, cities that are inclusive, they are comprehensive, resilient, with shared identities. In the years to come, IPCC will be working on the Paris objective related to reaching the long-term objectives related to the environment. And I hope we can focus together on the dimension of climate change and whether this dimension has led to weaknesses and flaws in our resilience. The working group will be trying to focus on adaptation. I believe that culture and heritage are essential in facing different climate risks. Culture and heritage are both threatened by the impact of climate change, but they are also part of the solution. Culture and heritage, including creativity, knowledge systems, and information of indigenous people, can contribute to achieving the objectives of the Paris Agreement. The strategies focused on culture and heritage can strengthen the capacity of cities and regions in dealing with different impacts and challenges, and to evaluate and mitigate the impact of climate change. These premises will be surely discussed in the days to come, and we hope that the discussions and the results and outcomes of this meeting will have a significant role in solving the different issues. Today, you talked about the German Foundation for Environment, and it's one of the biggest organizations worldwide focusing on the protection of the environment. One of the efficient partners in this meeting, and thanks to this collaboration, we were encouraged to think more about culture, heritage, and climate change. I would like to thank my colleagues from ICOMOS in Germany for their enthusiasm in dealing with this subject. We will be also holding another meeting and a working group to focus on the links between culture, heritage, and climate change. And I hope that we will be able to spread the information on this topic all around the world, in all countries and all regions, and I hope that we'll have a positive impact. I would like to thank my colleagues who have taken part in these initiatives year after year. This meeting is very useful. It's a very important step, but I believe that the road is still long. We need to be able to make sure that the recommendations of this meeting will be built on in upcoming meetings and will allow us to find solutions to climate change and to implement the Paris Agreement. Before concluding, allow me to praise all the efforts that were exerted by all the partners and all the organizations. Thank you for your incredible efforts. Thank you very much. And I am honored to see today the scientists and the high-level experts who have joined us. I wish you success in your discussions, and I hope that your meeting and your discussions will push us forward in order to find the link of culture, heritage, and climate change. Good luck, and thank you for your time.
Merci, Professor Paul Beaumont. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Pasang Gulma Sherpa, former co-chair and current member of the Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples Platform Facilitative Working Group. And Dr. Pasang, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Will. I really appreciate for your invitation to join to this important event. Ladies and gentlemen, and my great pleasure to be in this event. I really appreciate the earlier speaker, including Dr. Huesan and Mr. Ernesto, who already highlighted the importance of the cultural values and knowledge system, and particularly on board of indigenous knowledge system along with the science. I really appreciate the few words I could follow up in French. I really, be very thankful with this great efforts of ICOMOS, UNESCO, and IPCC, especially coming up with 3 white papers. And I really appreciate that trying to bring the paradigm shift of incorporating indigenous and knowledge system, indigenous and local knowledge system, along with the scientific knowledge systems in the discourse of climate change. As part of the facility working group of local communities and indigenous people platform of the UNCCC, I have been already familiar with your efforts when I was co-chairing the session, and I'm already leading different, co-leading different activities within the FWG and trying my best to exchange the knowledge I have been hearing and exchanging knowledge with you. In the recent FWG 6 meeting in the Glasgow in parallel session, along with different sessions during the COP26, I have already shared the efforts of the culture, heritage, and climate change, incorporating indigenous knowledge and local value system along with the science for the climate change resilience efforts. And I believe this should be continued in the future too. Despite the different challenges for our ahead in the future, however, I see a lot of opportunities that FWG can learn from this white paper, and also enhance different enhancement and implementation of the different activities of the FWG, especially the activities corresponding to the indigenous knowledge system, that we have been trying to incorporate the indigenous knowledge system in the curriculum, both in formal and informal education. In the enhancement of this curriculum, I believe this white paper would contribute a lot. And I really wish that collaboration will continue in the future, no matter what in the coming days too. And especially, I was also in the presidential panels on the IPCC in the Glasgow, that I already highlighted some of the issues of indigenous people. I would like to come up with some just only few parts that the efforts of IPCC is there for understanding the diverse knowledge system, and also presenting indigenous peoples as vulnerable to the climate change and incorporating. As I have already highlighted also, however, just only presenting the indigenous people as vulnerable is not enough, because the different studies including the ICBase and IUCN and World Bank, and even different, including the follow-up reiteration of this study by the FWG of the LCIP of the UNCCC already highlighted that hardly 6.2% of the global indigenous peoples have already contributing for 80% of the safeguarding 80% of the biodiversity. This outcome is the contribution played by the indigenous people around the world for continuation of our customary governance system, the role and contribution of our indigenous customary institution with our self-governance system, our knowledge system, cultural practices should be enhanced further. And the contribution of indigenous peoples need to be highlighted and further doing research so that it can not only as a contributing to the scientific knowledge, but as a equal footing and as a partners can enhance for the holistic knowledge system as well as for the sustainable future, as already highlighted by our distinguished speaker earlier. In the different studies, as I have already indicated, that indigenous knowledge system had contributed for climate change resilience, biodiversity, and ecosystem. However, if you see on the grounds, the recognition of our customary governance, the recognition of indigenous knowledge system is hardly there. So this is very important that 3 white papers will just the beginning, I believe. This is not the end, but just only the beginning that will continue work on the integration and sensitizing the policymakers, the state parties, the different bodies, including inside and outside the UNCCC and bilateral agency, that how important it is to invest on indigenous knowledge system, support indigenous knowledge system, and incorporate indigenous knowledge system along with the scientific knowledge system, and that's how we can bring the harmonical society and the balanced future ahead, and having the hope for our children in the coming days. And then especially, I just would like to highlight also the facility working group of local communities and indigenous people platform of the UNCCC have with 3 functions, with the knowledge, capacity building, climate change policy and action. In this knowledge system, we have a layers of the different activities. And then these layers of activities will especially to help how indigenous knowledge system have contributed for climate change discourse, and also aware our policymakers, state parties, and also the different constituent bodies within the UNCCC. And we have recently, almost at the end of the 2 years work plan by this 2021 December, and we have already adopted the 3 years work plan by the COP26 by the SUBSTA. So in the 3 years work plan, especially, we are hoping to continue our knowledge system, and I really wish and hope that we can build on our partnership and collaboration in the future in a long journey ahead, so that we can help each others to enhancing indigenous people knowledge system and promoting and recognition in all levels that contributed. And finally, I also would like to share that on 8th of December, a day after tomorrow, we have a global level dialogue on the indigenous knowledge system. I would like to welcome all of you, even all the audience who are here. You can see the link and web page in the LCIP web portal, but I would be happy to share the link with Will, who could already would share. And I really, this is how we can enhance further our knowledge system and sensitizing our knowledge system by helping each other, joining each other's events, and sharing and gathering the knowledge, and then also value and putting all our efforts for promoting, respecting, recognizing indigenous knowledge system. And finally, I really wish you all the best for these pioneer efforts. I really appreciate the efforts and my support as my individual capacity, as well as my engagement in the different forums at the international and regional and national level. My support will always be there to continue for the recognition of our effort system. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sherpa, for that important intercession on the role of contribution of Indigenous people in responding to climate change. Last but by no means least, I would like to introduce the International Co-Sponsored Meeting on Culture, Heritage and Climate Change Scientific Coordinator, Dr. Hannah Morell, who will provide a brief overview and taster of what we're going to be discussing and looking at this week. Dr. Morell.
Thanks, Will. So hello and welcome everyone. It's really fantastic to reach this point of our journey today. And what an honor to follow such distinguished speakers. And I thank you all for your words and inspiration. So my name is Hannah Morell, and I'm the scientific coordinator of this week's event, having previously been its climate heritage specialist. And in my role, I work closely with the co-chairs, Deborah Roberts, Jyoti Hosagrahar, and William McGarry, as well as the SSC and our climate heritage specialist, Sarah Ferguson. And what I'd really like to do in the next 5 to 10 minutes is just quickly talk through the main aim of this week, which in a nutshell is to anchor climate change and climate science to our discussions in culture and heritage. And on this basis, this international co-sponsored meeting on culture, heritage, and climate change aims to take stock of the current state of knowledge in relation to connections between culture, natural and cultural heritage, and anthropogenic climate change. And in that process, we hope to better understand the nature, depth of, and gaps in knowledge regarding these connections, but also to build new conversations and collaborations between culture, heritage, and climate change, so that we can direct messaging and support towards future research and action in climate science, mitigation, and adaptation. So to do that, we've focused on 3 overarching scientific questions and have 2 cross-cutting themes which weave through those questions. So the first 3 questions relate first to the systemic connections of culture, heritage, and climate change. So in short, we call that the knowledge systems question. Then our second question is impacts, which includes loss, damage, and adaptation for culture and heritage. And third is solutions, which includes the roles that culture and heritage can have in shaping transformative and alternative sustainable futures. And threaded through those questions are the 2 cross-cutting themes that I mentioned. It's the capacity to learn from the past and cultural governance. And of course, it's worth saying that these scientific questions or themes are interrelated and really can't be considered in isolation. So their categorization into separate days this week is by no means indicative of seeing them as separate concepts. So the ICSM this week includes a series of 3 panels, public panels, but also workshop sessions for meeting participants that will take place over the week. And each of these 3 overarching questions will be the focus of a different day. So today, Monday, our focus is on the knowledge systems question. Today, we're looking at diverse knowledge systems and whether there are opportunities to work across 3 systems of knowledge. So that is indigenous knowledge, local knowledge, and scientific knowledge. And of course, these will draw on how people, groups, cultures, societies think, perceive, believe, and bring up values and practices and institutional approaches to heritage. But it'll also draw on different understandings of climate change or understandings of risk, loss, and the need, if any, for solutions. So we've put this first really because perception and approach are at the heart of what people understand or see as impacts and what we think or develop as solutions. On Wednesday, we move to understandings of and approaches to loss, damage, vulnerability, risk, and that's packaged as impacts of climate change for culture and heritage. So here we address a lot of the challenges of how it is that we identify, observe, and monitor impacts, and how we even begin to acknowledge and recognize the range of diverse forms of impacts, whether that be long-term versus short-term, local versus regional, national or global, or other contexts related to assessment biases, undocumented losses, and damage. And this theme really acts as a bridge between knowledge systems and what we begin to talk about on Friday, which is solutions. And at the heart of solutions is creating that space across knowledge systems, disciplines, governance, regions, to really think about culture and heritage and what role that they have for transformative change and alternative sustainable futures. But also it's important here to enhance our understanding of what works at scale beyond the local. So we see this event as a key milestone in bringing the worlds of heritage and climate science together, two worlds of knowledge that have not necessarily acknowledged each other's potential for synergy and where they might overlap. And of course, it's at this intersection where we can start to have a more holistic view of the challenges and opportunities in the realm of climate change, whether that be via nature or culture-based solutions, addressing ethics, international property in terms of engagement with each other or building capacity. And in addition to that, thinking about practical and credible solutions such as decarbonization and other creative ways for mitigation, addressing climate relocation, adaptation, and learning from the past. So the list is really plenty. But also, it's really worth emphasizing that people are at the heart of change, and that enhancing our understandings of systems of knowledge, impacts, and solutions needs to have that people-centered approach, which is why the recognition of culture and heritage in climate thinking is so critical. Also, organizations need to step up and start thinking about their own positionality, dependencies, histories, ways of engaging, and governance structures, and start acting flexibly and reflexively if we are to truly succeed in transformative change. So this week will be captured in a final report and other work due to come out in spring next year. The timing and design of this is so that it acts as a resource as the IPCC scopes reports to deliver in its 7th assessment report cycle. But we also hope more broadly this meeting and follow-on work will help better align culture, heritage, and climate research and enhance understanding of the role of diverse knowledge systems in climate science and action. So I'm going to leave it there. You can find out more on our public-facing website, and I hope to see many of you at the first of our panel discussions up next, and of course, hope to hear more from you as we continue down this journey. Thanks so much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morel, and thank you, merci, gracias to today's speakers, to Dr. Ho-Sung Lee from the IPCC, to Mr. Ernesto Atone from UNESCO, to Professor Patricio from ICMOS, and Dr. Pasang Dalma Sherpa from the Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples Platform Facilitative Working Group. It's been a great honor and privilege to have you here today. And on behalf of myself and the other co-chairs, thank you again. Your words will inspire and lead us as we go about our meeting this week. I would also like to thank everybody listening to us live today and invite you to stay around for our next panel session, which will be broadcast on this same channel and will be beginning in almost exactly 10 minutes time following a brief break. Thank you very much.